investment zone, the potential for conflicts to arise, particularly around access to research and development opportunities for the universities. And when we get to item 6 on the agenda, we'll just discuss those particular points and how we deal with them going forward. So none of us are subject to any additional scrutiny or allegations around vested interest or any institutions around the table having sort of competitive advantage due to their access to or membership of the investment zone board. But in the first instance, are there any members that wish to declare an interest in any item we're discussing? No. Okay, thank you very much. So the next item is just for me a true chairman's remarks. I'll keep these brief. And I'd be actually, once I've said a few words, be open to any other broader comments anyone wants to make. But I'd like to just, applaud all those that have put work and effort into developing the investment zones across this region. It's taken a lot of work and effort. Also, it was the first issues that I got approval support for at my first board, so I'm very thankful for that. And I do know that at some stages over recent months, some of the negotiations around the creation of the investment zones were actually quite sensitive, and the way in which some of the relationships discussions with across the councils across this region needed a lot of attention and considerable sort of goodwill to others and to manage some of the sensitivities and some of the demands being placed on us. But having got there, and I'm really appreciative of the support all of you provided to get where we are now. We are at a pivotal moment, and it's a very timely moment because for the new government, growth is everything, and it needs to be everything. I think we all know that, and us pulling every lever we can in this region to drive growth is critical to the prosperity of the region, opportunities for the people here, attracting with investment, and also I think about our own reputations in terms of our relationship with the government. And I'll say a bit more about conversations I've been having with key people in the government around our ambitions. And we also need to produce a regional growth plan. And of course, what we're doing on investment zones is pivotal to that. So I would really just like to thank everyone in this room for the effort you put into this and the support you provided and the leadership you've taken and will need to take in the future if we're going to get the leverage we need around growth and prosperity and attract the investment, the jobs we need. So I just wanted to say that. I didn't know anyone else that wanted to make any other comments at this point. No, okay. So we'll now move on to the investment board governance. I think Julie was going to lead on that.
No, if I may.
Sorry, Steve. Sorry, I've got.
Thank you, Chair. There are three main items for the governance considerations. The first is the terms of reference, which hopefully you've seen. They've been passed by the CA board. We have a work plan, which we'll come to in a moment. But I think the first key decision is a vice chair.
Yeah, so I'm proposing Sharon Thompson, who had the previous role, will continue as vice chair.
Seconded. Thank you.
Okay.
Didn't even have a chance to say no. Too late, Chief.
Yeah, what I would say on governance, though, I think there are some sort of discussions going forward as we move through the phases of this programme about additional membership, role of business, and I'll touch on one or two of those issues after Steve has said a bit more.
Thank you. The other formal item, then there is an additional, was the work plan, which is on page 9. And the only reason I just wanted to spend a couple of moments on that was to explain the work plan for the board looking across the year. What we tried to capture here is the key decisions that the investment zone board will be making, and that's within the delegations, which is between £5 million and £20 million. The reason we put it in the work plan is because there will be other decisions which will be delegated within the CA structures for smaller sums below £5 million. And very much that the overall programme could also, I think, Chair, if I may, the intention with the investment zone board was always that it is, we've got a good breadth of partners here with the universities and local authority leaders. We make it quite dynamic. So if there are other topics and subjects that members would like to contribute, we can add those to the forward plan. This just gives an overview of what's required. That was the only thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. So over the last couple of days, I've been discussing with mayors across the country about their plans for how boards like this will run. I know we'll say a bit more about conflicts we need to avoid, but I'm really clear this is a dynamic group that is working best effect to deliver investment. And I'm open to ideas and contributions going forward from all members around whether or not there are other businesses or institutions that would add value as we progress. Councillor Boyle.
And it's just on that actual point, Rich, that I've raised this before. Clearly, whilst this group is what it is, by definition, what this requires, it requires businesses to come and invest in our areas. And I would have thought at some stage that there would be room for some of the main protagonists involved in that. What capacity they would be involved in this investment zone board, I'm not entirely sure, but I do think it would be right, and it follows on from the work that goes on either on the investment board, where that's had quite a broad range of members over the years that have added some value to the decision-making process. And of course, hot on the heels of, I know that local enterprise partnerships weren't everybody's cup of tea, and they had a lot of cons as well as pros. But I found in Coventry and Warwickshire, in the main, they worked quite well and brought a level of understanding and expertise outside of the public sector particularly that was really valuable in order to understand the decision-making and the processes that you had to go through in order to bring those to the board. So it's just something that I just want to put there on the table, not least of all because as part of the investment zone, Coventry and Warwickshire, clearly that's a joint partnership between Coventry and Warwickshire and of course the Rigby Group, who have got a long lease on the airport. And again, I think in terms of how we work with that going forward, I think is very crucial. That's why I raise it.
Thank you, Jim, and some really valid points there, which we may touch on through the discussion. But also, I see the role of business not just contributing this, but we also need to build advocacy for what we're doing, and businesses are very effective at doing that. I've seen it on some other projects recently across the region. So, Councillor Simpkins.
Yeah, I don't mind anybody coming contributing as long as you've got the guiding principle. It's good for the West Midlands Combined Authority, and everything that we invest in has to have a mutual benefit, not just to the 7 Mets, but the non-coms as well. In my experience, businesses see it as a way of de-risking projects, so I don't mind that as long as the material benefit back. It has to benefit the residents of the 7 Mets, but also it has to contribute to the benefit to the non-coms as well. And that, for me, is where we will need a proper strategy moving forward that actually delivers that. We will probably incorporate the Growth Company, where it should be the main forum for businesses to actually contribute and make recommendations to not just this board, but also the main board itself. I think it's really important that politicians sometimes are too risky, but we need to de-risk what we do in working with it. But if it's a genuine partnership, then we share the risk.
Okay, so I think you've just raised an important point. I think there is a regional institution that isn't around the table today, the West Midlands Growth Company, that I propose joins us. I know they're having conversations more widely, and they won't be conflicted. But I think there is, in real time, if people have views about additional membership, particularly from the business community, I think we should entertain them and discuss them for the reasons Jim's outlined, Steve's outlined, I believe to be right. But thanks for the call.
Yeah, just I support the principles of this. I think membership of the board is one thing, engagement with stakeholders and community and other businesses quite another. It's quite easy to have somebody from business around the table, but he represents that business maybe. So it's quite tricky in saying whether should someone be around the table. But what needs to happen here and in other forums is to make sure we engage effectively with the private sector, who in the end will bring in a lot of investment.
Thank you, Ian. I think those points are valid, and so I think there is look, we need to hold back from just sort of board membership, but there is something about forward business engagement, how we market these sites and ensure that we're getting maximum leverage from these significant opportunities. I'll say a bit more about government's perception of these opportunities a bit later on the agenda. So, sorry. First one,
On.
okay.
Is that on? Thank you. So I think I'm just following on from Ian's point around completely open to kind of board membership. Two things come to mind. One is around governance, and are these going to be ultimately non-voting members? So let's put that to one side. But is the question more around what skills or what areas or what sectors do we need to come to the table? So as opposed to opening up to just increasing the number of members, are there specific areas we want to kind of tap into that ultimately serves the goal of this board?
Thank you, Russell. Those are points. I'll come back to Steve to my left on these issues. So they are, for me, they're sort of two issues here, and they might collide. I think they create a dichotomy, but it is about I think getting some input from people with a business investment perspective that might give real commitments about whether or not there's advice or additional understanding we have about what we might be doing and where we might do things better. But I think there's, and that's probably separate to the governance piece, which can give rise to some conflict, I think. So there is, I just raise it something for us to be cognizant of going forward, and the fact that, if this is going to work really effectively, it will be ultimately driven by, business and, us proposing and developing the best possible commercial proposition. Steve, did you want to just come back on membership, how we might approach that in relation to governance going forward?
I will do, but I think Councillor Watson had up a question.
Sorry, Mr.
No, I'll come back.
Yeah, thank you. If I could, I think there's a couple of points I'd just like to comment on, if that's okay, Chair. I mean, Councillor Boyle and Councillor Simpkins are absolutely right. The Coventry and Warwickshire LEP worked effectively really well for us, and we created a really good reputation with business. Warwickshire is seen as a really good landing place for business. And you'll have seen, you mentioned FDI, foreign direct investment. We've back way above our weight. I think we're fourth on the table. So we do an incredibly good job. And I think it's really important that we leverage those businesses and treat them as partners and talk to them as partners, but equally with that shared risk. With regard to the board, I think we have to be really careful, though. I agree with having other people on the board. But when a board gets too large, it risks becoming a committee rather than a board, and you then struggle to make decisions or struggle to actually move things forward. So there were just 2 points I wanted to make, from Warwickshire as such, which is a non-constituent member, and the Growth Hub. You mentioned the West Midlands Growth Hub. We have Coventry and Warwickshire Growth Hub as well, who do fantastically well. So I think we could probably learn from both of those growth hubs.
Thank you very much for this contribution. So let's look, I propose the West Midlands Growth Company joins this as to give us that sort of feedback, and they can update us on some of the engagement they're doing in businesses more strategically and globally. I think we've had a discussion about the role of business. I think if anyone in the future, we believe that we're missing out on something, or we're underrepresented, or we would get more value with some wider representation. I suggest we deal with that at the time going forward. So at this moment, I propose we invite the Growth Company to sit on the board. That will be my only firm recommendation at this point.
Can I check that is agreed with members? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And may I just quickly clarify on the voting issue? The voting members are the constituent local authorities and mayor, only because this is a publicly accountable body, and that's the voting members. But others clearly are here to fight.
Okay, if that's the case, then can we move to the three? Sorry, what? Sorry, Councillor Simpkins here.
So can I just ask the monitoring officer, does it then get ratified at board level? Leaders.
So, if the quorum for this committee is achieved, the recommendations will not be required to go up to CA board. If this meeting is not quorum, then there is different processes we can go through.
And just to clarify, sorry, decisions over £20 million will still need to go to the CA board, but otherwise everything is delegated from the CA board to this investment.
So I just don't want this board to turn into big. But the voting members are not just the constituent members of this
Sorry,
CA, it's
correct.
also our colleagues from Warwickshire
Warwickshire.
and Warwick today.
Yes.
So
Sorry,
oh,
forgive me,
so,
councillor.
I could hear someone muttering down there.
Sorry, councillor,
Kill
I
Steve
apologise.
Bowen. It's not something-
Sorry, forgive me, I apologise, exactly right.
Stand corrected, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's a good job.
So thank you for that. I think we're pretty clear on the direction of travel, but reaffirming where we are now. So in that's the case, can we then move to the three recommendations printed on page 1 of your report pack, and with the additional recommendations to act senior representative from the growth company to becoming a non-voting member of the board? Are these agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Very much. Move on to, so I think we might. So in terms of the next item, the investment zone update, this report provides the board an overview of the programme to enable it to monitor progress and directs, importantly, ongoing delivery, given that we are at the start of this very early in this process. So at this point, I'm going to ask the Partnership and Engagement Strategy Lead to present an overview of the programme, and then I'll invite responsible officers for each of the sites, provide a brief overview of their respective areas, and then I'll come back to Steve for an update on sort of, how this is fitting together regionally. So can I ask the Partnerships Engagement Strategic Lead then to present the overview? Thank you.
Thank you. So you'll have on.
Let's put your mic on.
It's a good job you're here, councillor Boyle. I do apologise. Thank you.
You worked here long.
25 years. So on page 13, we provided a brief summary overview of a programme to date, and on page 12 and 13, sorry, you can see the summary. So the annual delivery plan was the foundation for the programme that has been submitted to government, as you'll be aware. There is an item coming in item 6, which is a programme business case, which looks at the spend profile, and there's an additional paper to that. To reinforce that we haven't stood still while we've been waiting for minor matters like the general election to pass through. Business cases are being developed in the background. We have a very strong stakeholder group, which includes representatives from across the region, including our university partners, helping to shape the programmes that you see before you today. We also have, of course, strong investor interest, and that promotion is still ongoing, whether that's through big events like UK Reef or through our site partners actually leading those engagements. So it has been progressing whilst we've been waiting for sign-off, and we are expecting the first funding to come through from government in the next couple of weeks once everything's settled down. So as a programme as a whole, we are okay. There's a couple you'll see on the RAG rating on page 13 in amber. The 2 RAG items there in amber are, 1, the capacity to deliver, and that's a requirement for government to get the funding in, so it's still amber at the moment. And the other one was just about the spend profile, because the longer it's been delayed, but we are addressing that with an HCLG, and there's an update on that later. So it is the first board meeting. There are any comments on how papers are presented, please do feed them back, and we can improve and enhance those. But as an overview, hopefully that gives us a good pitch, but happy to take questions or pass to the site leads and then take questions.
Okay, if there are no questions, let's proceed to the site leads. So Philip Nell from Birmingham, would you like to kick off on yes, I'm sorry, here in Birmingham, thanks.
Great, thanks. Just a very brief update from us from the BKQ side. So we've got David and Richard from our university partners in the room, which is fantastic. So we've been working hard with our key delivery partners, both the universities and our private sector partners, Frontwood, SciTech and Woodbourne Group, on working through delivery plan, and I think the key focus has been around governance, and I know we've touched on that a bit in this meeting already. How we will promote sites, how we will work together. That's a key factor for us, and obviously we're straining to get that in place. We're scoping out the strategic outline case for the capital funding. So we have 9 million capital funding coming through from the CA within the discussions with Steve and colleagues around what that looks like and how it will feed through to us. Initially likely to go into master planning as a first phase, and then we're working through some of our other asks in terms of improvements, one of which is around improvement access across the large road that bisects the site. It's also important to say that the interaction between the growth zone, if I'm getting the right terminology anyway, the BKQ element of the investment zone and our enterprise zone and our levelling up zone, because they all kind of overlay with each other, is really important to us. We had a really useful meeting, I hope Councillor Cox agrees, with Solihull colleagues on Tuesday this week to talk about next steps for the East Birmingham North Solihull levelling up zone, and we're really keen to make sure we leverage as much as possible from those 3 zones working effectively in partnership together. It's also really important to say that BKQ and the wider, so we have effectively two elements to BKQ. There's the core zone, which is about 30 odd hectares, over which we have majority control in terms of the land holdings. There is a wider 130 odd hectare element which stretches effectively up towards Spaghetti Junction. That's much more of mixed use regeneration, a real need for more affordable and improved housing outcomes in that location. But the important thing to say here is that the BKQ element forms a really important part of our skills agenda. Both our university partners recruit students, large numbers of their student cohort from local residents, a lot from deprived backgrounds, and that's really important to us that we align that improvement in skills with our skills agenda, which my colleague Councillor Thompson is leading on within the council. One risk I think we've highlighted in the report is around planning and resource. Those of you who've been I don't know, on another planet for the last few months might not have realised we've had some financial challenges, let's put it like that, over the last few months. Our planning team has borne a fair element of that, and that is a risk for us, a genuine risk, and we're being really focused on how we resolve that, working with development partners in the city, trying to understand how we prioritise, because we are going to be restricted in delivery resource. This is a really important part of our delivery programme, working with combined authority colleagues on the place-based strategies and how integral to that this will be part. So that will help inform that. But I can't sit here and say that isn't going to be a challenge for us, because it is.
Thank you, Philip. I will ask if anyone's got any points or questions or remarks as we go through each of the zones, simply because I think if we get to the end, there could be quite a lot to that's really helpful, I think. One of the things I'm keen to do before we wait for some further statements around the economy from the Chancellor Exchequer on Monday, but what I'm really keen to do, and I spoke to Andrew Rayner last week about this, is over the summer just write to her in terms of outlining progress, but also if there are any the key obstacles and hurdles that we face about delivering these that impact on growth. And sometimes they're not site specific, but they are organisation specific, and the issues you raised about planning, I think, are going to be very relevant to that content, and I'm keen to pick up on any other issues that can help us move this forward. Ian, did you want to say something?
Just a question, really. It says securing vacancy of tax sites. Does that mean, securing ownership, terminating leases, clearing, I don't know, people occupying it? Because obviously the timescales can be much affected by that sort of thing.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cox. Yeah, I mean, it is really about securing vacant possession. So we're in. I can't say we own 100% of the land in the zone, but we own a significant element of it. And what we're talking about, certainly in terms of the tax sites, we have control. We have a legal interest in those sites, but in some cases they're subject to tenancies, which we need to work through. But we have a good line of sight to delivering those sites. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to put them in as tax sites.
I hate to be a pettifogging lawyer over this, but when you say most of the site, with development sites, we often have a sweeper CPO and things like that, all of which take time. So I'm just making sure that there's no issues like that, or indeed if there is, because this could be anywhere.
Yes.
What the remedy might be.
Yeah, no, it's a really useful point. I mean, I'm probably not betraying any confidentialities here to say that we are the occupier of some of those sites. So it's working with colleagues, which may or may not make it easier. I suspect I know which way that's going to go. But anyway, yes, you make a very valid point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Courts. Thank you, Philip. Any other points? Stephen?
Just on that, the expediency of doing this, because once we start to look and set down sites, people start to get to ramp their price up. So we need the flexibility of the spend across the 3 zones, so as we can actually incorporate that. Delay then hits on to inflation, so all these costs and building up. So we need to make sure that we've got flexibility within the spend, so as we can actually start to do that. I mean, the Green Innovation Corridor is good to go, but that's another story for another night. But what I'm going to say is that we need that flexibility within the single settlement that works within the investment zones to actually get these things done. The quicker we can acquire the sites, might be that we look to see in a new government to strengthen the CPO, to expedite it.
Yes.
I think it's important that we do that, because this is about growth as well, and skills and jobs. So we need to make sure that we've got an open dialogue with government, so as we can expedite this process moving forward. We've waited far too long to get these projects delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Simpkins. You're spot on, and it's in advance to that meeting. One of the notes I made prior to this meeting was, in terms of that letter to Secretary of State, was around CPOs and what we need to do to speed up delivery, because it takes long in this country, it has, and in this region, to get projects delivered, and we need to remove as far as possible all the obstacles that get in the way of us delivering projects. Councillor Courts, did you want to?
Not really, but Stephen's really put his finger on it, because to have a CPO in the background instantly transforms negotiation potential. And that is exactly what you're saying, Mayor, about speeding things up.
Thank you. And I think there are times when we have to use our muscle, to get stuff done. And if we don't, no one else will. So thank you, Philip. Stephen Weir from Coventry, you're now going to give us an update on the Gigapark.
So we've got our local partnership in place, governance structure set up for the Coventry and Warwick Gigaparks. That's Warwick District Council, Warwickshire County Council, Coventry City Council as the lead partner, and our colleagues from University of Warwick and Coventry University have been in place for some time and is working very well. We've also worked really closely with West Midlands Growth Company to produce marketing collateral specific to the Coventry Warwick Gigapark, so that we can market the offer that we've got there. The big thing that we are working on at the moment is the strategic outline business case for the funding for the largest of the sites in the Coventry and Warwickshire Gigapark. That's the site of Coventry Airport, which is marketed as Green Power Park, which I hope you've all heard about. And there's a total of £23 million in IZ flexible funding set aside for the site. And the principal thing that will do is upgrade the power supply for the site. That's important because that site is earmarked for production of EV batteries, and there's a very large power demand for EV batteries. So I'm just working through the details with Steve and his team for the outline for the first £2 million of that 23 million, which we'll use to design the power supply that will service the site for the first 30 megavolt amps of power for the site, and then work through the full business case after that in due course. I think that's due to land at this board in December, and then at the CA board in January as the current timetable. So there's a healthy level of interest in the site from battery manufacturers, also from the battery recycling sector, and also in the supply chain. So both specific to battery manufacturing and more generally in the advanced manufacturing supply chain. And as I said, working very closely with the growth company to promote what we've got to offer on the site.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that. Anyone has any points, questions, any issues for clarification?
Thank you, Chair. Just obviously, the Green Power Park isn't just the Green Power Park. This site also includes Segro and Whitley South. So there are two other sites that complicate it slightly because they're already in tranche, as it were.
Yeah.
But I think we just need to make sure that we keep that in our site, as it were.
Yeah, agree.
I agree with that. There's also when conversations I've had with people around the country in the last couple of weeks, they were at one point. There's probably I was flooding them with messages on WhatsApp, but there was, I think, centrally a bit of confusion about the branding of this stuff. Yeah, particularly this project. I think with various words being used. So I don't think it's an issue for us. But as we move forward with documentation and market information, we've just got to make sure that those that are responding have got have the clarity that what we will have in this room about how we're branding the various sites. Thanks for Boyle.
That is exactly the very point. Because when Steve was saying, so there's the wider Giga Park, and then Green Power Park is within that. So that was branded more specifically for battery manufacturing, which brings me to the obvious point I was making earlier in terms of having that. This is such an evolving market that I don't think the market fully understands it yet. And I think so is it any surprise nobody else necessarily does? And that is why I think to inform our decision making and take to the next level, it would be really helpful to have that expertise within the room in some way, shape or form in order for us to be able to take to the next level. Because there's some brilliant people out there telling us stuff, but they're not involved in the actual activity of the work in order to take to the next stage and in effect to land a potential investor. Because that's where, of course, as well, where government will be particularly interested, because clearly it will take that in order to take this to the next level.
No, thank you, Jim. You're absolutely right. And if and when Rachel Reeves is this sort of global investment conference that she was planning within 100 days, we did put a case forward for it being here, but almost every other region did. But we need these sites on that agenda and others. And the other thing I'm really keen to do, if we aren't the location for that event, we ought to be doing our own over the next 8 to 10 months. And what we're doing on those sites is really critical to that point. Thanks for calls.
Yeah, I'm just interested in this build pipeline of prospective investors, marketing collateral, development and promotion underway. I mean, you mentioned having a growth board here, but across the whole zone. And I meant to say, Philip, we had a very good meeting, Birmingham Solihull the other day. Was excellent. One of the things I think we mentioned was that the issue of a narrative, in a narrative that we can promote the region with, because it's not just Coventry, it's across. So there's probably some urgency in that, actually.
I agree. I agree with that, Ian, and we'll come back to some thoughts. That is really, really, I think, important. If we're promoting these regions, these sites, the market. Look, we haven't got the clarity ourselves. The market's not going to, so it's really, really critical. We know what branding is, and we'll pick up. I didn't know, Steve, whether at this point you had any thoughts on that and the way you might work with councils and others around the table just to move that forward.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very briefly, we are working with the growth company, not only on the site proposition, but a proposition for region as a whole, along with DVT and the Office for Investment as well. We have a draft proposition which has now gone back into DVT. All the stakeholders around the table have input into that through the stakeholder group, and I'm very happy to share that with colleagues afterwards. Just a very short, punchy, taking it as a regional investment opportunity as a whole. DVT will then take that to market as well alongside us. And of course, it will be evolving and developing as the opportunities come forward, as Councillor Boyle has.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, so can I just reiterate that message, because we keep having this conversation, we're involving, the Combined Authority Growth Company. Geographically, it's not in the Combined Authority, we're a non-constituent member, but can we just make sure we engage it? Because I want it to be really successful. It's really important for Warwickshire, Warwick District and the whole region. And sometimes if you don't just have the right conversations with the right people, we miss opportunities.
Just to confirm, your colleagues from Warwick and Warwickshire are on that stakeholder group as well, have inputted very strongly to it, alongside actually our innovation board, where I know Sarah Windrum from Warwickshire and Myra Park has inputs as well. So we are tying that through, but absolutely the next step is the proposition and the business voice and stuff.
And I hope you never have to raise that issue again. Otherwise, we will. Councillor Courts.
Sorry to be a pain, but just flicking up on the website, I'm not clear that there's any mention of investment zones or any of this sort of thing here. And I'd have thought anybody who's looking at the WM is going to go there. I can't see it.
The landing page is exactly the priority which the team are working on at the moment. Councillor Courts, and it will be landed.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really important issue, and I think every member of this board, the organisations they lead need to have ought to be having their own landing page in terms of this project, and you would be using every means to promote what we're seeking to do here and the difference that it needs to make. Okay, I'll now ask Richard Lawrence from Wolverhampton to provide an update on Wolverhampton's Green Investment Green Innovation Corridor.
Thank you, Chair. Brief update from our side of Wolverhampton. So currently undertaking the visioning and scoping, there's an initial proposition that is being developed over the next few weeks, which will be iterated with partners going forwards, particularly looking at spatial development, partnership opportunities. I'll come back onto that in a second. Skills, transport, finance and branding. Sector analysis identifies green innovation related to advanced manufacturing, the use of metals and materials, land reclamation and sustainable construction, aligned with the city's and the university's existing strengths as being core to the Green Innovation Corridor proposition. With regards to partnerships, we've now got a formal collaboration agreement that we are developing to be put in place between the key partners, which is the council and the university. Other city partners are being brought on board to include the City of Wolverhampton College, the Combined Authority and also the Growth Company. Procurement activity is going to take place shortly to identify a joint venture private partner stroke match funder, particularly on elements surrounding the Wolverhampton Science Park, as well as the Springfield campus and other sites in due course. The delivery capacity funding is being expedited by the Combined Authority following the general election. So revenue funding has been put in place to support the strategic outline case, together with the full business case and also programme development. With regards to the investment zone sites, the strategic outline case is being drafted for a late August submission. This will request a drawdown of circa £500,000 from the total of 7 million capital to fund site surveys and investigative works, predominantly around the Science Park area. A full business case will follow, requesting the remainder of the funds to support enabling works to bring forward up to 12,000 square metres of research and development and new business innovation space. The governance structure through the strategic board is now in place. That is supported by a working group and other meetings which are regularly taking place both at a regional level as well as a local level. And the timelines are under review as part of the strategic outline case process, and we're hoping that we'll be able to update those in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. Anyone have any questions or comments or points they want to raise? Okay, thank you. I'd just like to take this opportunity at this juncture. These for those leaders around the table from universities and also from those councils that are part of this region that aren't hosting investment zone sites themselves. Any reflections from yourselves, because it's so important. Everyone's making a contribution to this, that every part of the region benefits from these projects. I didn't know whether there are any other comments, anyone from university and or from council as part of this region not hosting one wants just to raise in terms of because we need to ensure the benefits of these projects, reach every part of the region. Yeah, Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think from our perspective at BCU, we pride ourselves on working in a collaborative way with both our local authorities, on the one hand, university partners, but also especially communities as well. Given the focus is on inclusive growth, I think it's very, very important that we connect communities who are outside the investment zone, particularly the business knowledge quarter. And how can universities then work with those communities that do not have the skills at the moment, but give them the skills working with us so they can access the employers in the high growth areas, as quickly as possible, because that's, I think, one of the key roles that we can play. And also, I think in terms of for BCU, STEAM and STEAM House is a very interesting model in terms of how we work in a very collaborative and in terms of design and development to attract businesses as part of our partnership. So I think we as a university pride ourselves into working with local communities, give them a transformational experience, and then create opportunities where people can start their businesses or develop skills, but also critically access the jobs of tomorrow, which are going to be different to the jobs we have at the moment.
Thank you very much for those comments. And I suppose I'll come back with you just for a further question is, what's your view on the best way you can make that contribution to these projects, and in terms of not just the governance is one issue on the table, it's actually about in real time how we can embed you actually in terms of the route maps and the delivery plans.
So I think for us, we are with Aston, in the Birmingham Knowledge Quarter, still coming up with what's the best proposition. And the proposition would have not just the economic impact, but the route to skills. And that has to include FE colleges, because not everybody needs a university degree to get into a skilled workplace. So I think we're slightly behind it. I think it's Wolverhampton that are already developing the outline business case for I don't think Birmingham Knowledge Quarter is at that position. So there's some work that we need to kind of ramp up to get to that position. But it has to take cognizance of the skills agenda as well as the economic imperative. What is the proposition that allows both skills and economic development?
Thank you very much, David. I think it's also something else we should, if we're working on this together, where we are developing business cases and good practice, is just really important that shared around those around the table, so we can build on the good work that we're doing. Councillor Corpse, did you want to?
Well, I can do. I mean, Steve might want me to tell my own business, but because I keep dipping in, it can no longer affect us. But on the other hand, because one here talks about attract a suitable development partner, and I do think we need to be very clear what we're expecting here, because, and it applies anywhere as well, because if we think a development partner is going to shed loads of risk, I think not. He will be saying this is the price, and you're including a profit margin instantly for any shedding of risk. So in terms of development, the massive things, skill expertise, there's marketing, there's a whole technical stuff. But I just think we need to be absolutely clear about what we're expecting a third party to come in, because you'll pay for it as opposed to the skill and expertise we already have. Just a professional comment.
No, thank you. That's really valuable. Nigel Driffield, then I think Steve Simpkins.
So I was just going to pick up on what you said about what can universities do, and I'm going to try and avoid going we do stuff as well. But so Warwick University, we obviously have WMG, and we've been in the kind of skills supply chain game for a long time here, and are central to this. Now, one of the things that I think might have changed, and I bow to the chair's sort of better connections than mine, but I think one of the things that might have changed a little bit since the election was these things were created as basically an inward investment proposition. And you look at the ministers who were involved, they were Johnson and the skills guy, Freeman.
not for skills, innovation guide. That was where these things were created. And my conversation, and so the Office for Investment was central to kind of marking our homework. And my sense, I work with the Office for Investment and also with DBT quite a lot, is this has moved a little bit to be more about the sort of conversation we've just had about, so what's in it for the people here? Let's not just do something that attracts people into the region, what's in it for the people here? And our collectively, I'm kind of looking, because all the universities seem to be sat next to each other, but our collective answer to that has to be about skills and also a plea for FE to be part of this. So I mean, Warwick University, WMG, etc., have been working for a long time in the kind of greening skills space, and this is part of this. So anything I think that we can do collectively to understand better what the skills need is, but also what we deliver in a way that also makes sense to someone from DFE, who, to be blunt, will say, is it 3 or 4? That's the sort of question that we get, and we need an answer to that. So I think the more our universities collectively can do in that space, the better. And I think that's what we can contribute.
Thank you very much for that. And really, I think highlighted the key point. And also, I'm very pleased we've got these investment zones, but I think they will carry more importance and more weight and get more focus going forward than perhaps they might have had at the back end of the previous administration. Councillor Simpkins.
You know David Goo, because he's chomping at the bit.
Okay, sorry, I missed David. Sorry, David. My eyesight, I can't see you at the end of the day.
Very can't you, Steve? I just really wanted to pick up the point that Councillor Courts just raised. I mean, and my colleagues on Wolverhampton, City of Wolverhampton Council will be bored with me saying this. And, you know, I come from a more commercial background than perhaps the HE sector. Is implicit in this whole conversation is of external funding coming in to supplement the funding that is being generously provided by central government to the zones. I haven't yet seen the plan for how that happens. You know, a credible plan for what is in it for a third party commercial investor in this. And so the conversation is all going in the right direction, and it's all really helpful. But until there is something to sell, there's no money coming. And I think we need to be really mindful of that in these great conversations we have, which is absent the proposition, you know, this whole thing becomes a great idea that we all spent a lot of time on, but never existed.
No, thank you for that. There is no doubt that we need a route map to convert the ideas into the opportunities that we need to develop. Councillor Simpkins.
Yeah, just on that, I perhaps I did declare my interest. I did a degree in Wolverhampton.
You need to leave the room now.
I need to leave the room. So, no, but seriously, there's two different conversations. There's the business world, which incorporates the universities because of that end use, which will be the businesses that want to attract. But there's the political question here, is that the investment that comes into Wolverhampton, I talk about the green innovation, it collaborates directly with the university and Wolverhampton College. Funny enough, there's a campus in Walsall from Wolverhampton University. So we want to be the centre for the black country in this space. My payoff is I'll get jobs and skills, I'll get an economy, then comes back to Wolverhampton, the town centre and the broader city itself. But that's really important that we do keep an eye on and foresight of what does it mean to the average person in the street. And it gives them opportunities to get better income, opportunities to learn new skills. We also need to make sure that any vocational skills that are on there have a level parity with an academic degree. So you will not get the business sector to come in straight away. They have to see that end product, because is it worth me investing in that? Will I get a return? So we do it then. So if you look at our Green Innovation Corridor, it goes all the way along the big airplane engineers, so we've got to hook them in straight away, and that's the future workforce. And hopefully if we can get further down the track, we'll get right to the bottom of I-54 and we'll fill that up. But we need to make sure that we de-risk that in the process so as we can bring that private sector investment in. But there's the jobs and skills will for the Green Innovation Corridor will be for the wider black country. You know, we're connected to Sandon, connected to Dudley and Paul down there. So it's them I think what we need to do is have a strategy that actually place plans across our West Midlands, who's doing what universities are going to lead on this. There's a natural border between the Black Country, Birmingham, Solihull and Coventry, Warwickshire as well. We need to level up from, to coin a phrase, is from all that investment and foreign investment that comes into the south of Birmingham, Coventry and Warwickshire. We need to level that across into the Black Country because we're far too behind. So this is why we are partners in and around the Green Innovation Corridor. The first obvious step was to be the university, the colleges to move forward. There's a college in every part of the Black Country. So we need to make sure that they're part of the conversation as well. But until you get that investment that comes in to kickstart the private sector, you're going to be waiting.
Thank you, Councillor Simpkins. I think Councillor Thompson wants to come in. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to tell, a lot of what we discuss in these events, with these meetings, with investment zones, can be quite technical and bureaucratic, but there is some storytelling we need to tell far more effectively about these places, so they have far more meaning. And we need to leverage some of that with the people out there that we want to benefit from this. And remind you, that's why we're doing this for more than anyone else. And if the benefits of this, we should maximise the benefits of this of people in this region today. And the next generation need to be the biggest beneficiaries of this programme going forward. Councillor Thompson.
I think Chair, you just literally said it more eloquently than I probably would have.
Sorry.
But it is making sure that we don't lose sight of the skills piece, because nothing will be worse than hitting the goal and missing the point, where we start creating jobs for the region and it's not people that are in the region that are actually benefiting from them because they haven't got the right skills, sort of way we evolving with technology and innovation along the piece. I think it's really, really important that we keep skills at the heart of some of this, just to make sure that the people of the region are absolutely the beneficiaries of all of the efforts across the piece.
Thank you. I'm going to go Paul from Coventry University and then back to Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm going to echo what's been said already, but the skills piece is clearly really important. And actually, to go back to your original question, Richard, we've had every opportunity to get involved in the conversation. So as Coventry University, we've been part of the board, we've been encouraged to contribute and put forward ideas. And there are two things I wanted to quickly mention. I think from a skills perspective, we were really keen to add into that agenda and help bring together partners with colleagues from Warwick, Coventry City Council, our FE partners within Coventry Warwickshire, to talk about that skills piece and bring everyone together with the combined authority, which we did last month. And actually, with the investment zones being a key priority for us, we've worked with our other university partners to look at leveraging other investment and funding to support the activities of the investment zones. There are a couple of projects that have been submitted, which, if successful, will add value to the work that's been done already, which is really important for us.
No, that's fantastic. One of the things I'm really keen that we do in forum like this, because it might be for some people in the room the best way to share some of that, is where there are some really positive outcomes and there's some positive news and developments. We ought to be discussing them really openly, and that would be fantastic. Councillor Boyle.
Yeah, the risk of us falling into a sort of philosophical debate about what is an investment zone and what should it do. I'm really clear about the whole purpose and point of this, and always have been since day one, because we could see that as a, never mind just as Coventry, as a city, but the West Midlands as a region, has relied heavily economically on our manufacturing industrial base that we've seen undermined and downsized over the years. And as the world has moved on and our economy has changed and the world's economy has changed and the industries that we still massively rely on, we haven't as a country properly invested in infrastructure and properly invested in our businesses and properly invested in our people if we're going to take advantage of some of the opportunities out there. And the whole purpose and point this came from, there's only one gigafactory operating anywhere in this country. It's worth about 1 gigawatt up in Sunderland, and it's purely just for Nissan. There aren't any others. And the one thing I will say about the last government setting up the investment zone was right. The problem was they never had an industrial strategy to back it up. And we've now got a government who have actually proposing, want to have an industrial strategy. But it's not just about what are the jobs of the future and the skills that we need. We need to protect the businesses that are here now, because they're struggling to transfer and to take on board, you know, the new world. You know, if a supplier to Renault or to Nissan or to Land Rover is supplying, I don't know, gearboxes or exhaust pipes, if they don't find something else to do, they're out of a job. And we as a country are going to miss that. And I was really pleased to hear this morning, you know, in a roundabout way, it was my alarm call, you know, Ed Miliband, you know, it's enough to wake anybody from the dead, on the radio talking about building loads of offshore wind farms and all the rest of it. We're actually starting to get on with it. And I hope to see that we've got a government that wants to actually roll up its sleeves and work with business to bring that investment in there. That's where it will happen. But saying, actually, you can build them here now, we're going to let you do it. The last government weren't letting them do it. That's the bottom line. That's where we are, and we've just got to get on with it.
We need to move on, but Steve Simpkins, I'll just bring you in then.
I think it would be poignant then. So what we're talking about is a transition fund from the old to the new. So that should be an ask from government. On the back of what Jim said about Ed Miliband's initiative about that, we need some transition fund. I've always said we should have had that in the Combined Authority. There should have been a transition green bank that actually help businesses to transform to the new technologies moving forward. I think it's important that we do make that recommendation back to government.
Thank you, Councillor Simpkins. I think we've had a worthwhile conversation around investment zone status and some of the issues we need to move forward. I'll bring back now to Steve, who's just going to outline progress on the revenue side of things.
Only very, very quickly, and it is a perfect segue, Councillor Simpkins, Councillor Boyle, because one of the key revenue programmes that we're developing, and it isn't at the scale that we're talking about, and perhaps that's something we can build on, is a supply chain transition fund. And that will integrate what's in the pack as a supply chain adaptation, so supporting businesses in how R&D grants, so that if they need to develop new technologies to respond to those new opportunities. And we're going to include a part of the skills development fund as well, because it may be about retraining staff. So the team, the economic development team, that pulled together a really comprehensive package, working with stakeholders around the table, so that it's actually business led. As these opportunities are coming, what do the businesses already in the region need to address those opportunities? And I think it's a really good call, if I may, that we can use that to go back to government to say, this is what some of this money is doing, can we take it up further? And then I can touch on revenue programs.
Steve.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said, but we should build in apprenticeships on the back of this fund. So we can, again, work with the youth, into the new skills. If we can have that, add that, that'd be really important. Don't forget, we can do that through the Combined Authority. We can just say, where's the apprenticeships that's on the back of this, and get people in there, and let local authorities place them in them apprenticeships. More faith in the local authorities doing that than DWP.
Sorry.
Yeah, this brings home, yeah, absolutely support that. And, you know, when talking to government, the need, I know that's recognised for schools to actually thinking about good jobs, you know, proper tradie type jobs, as opposed to just, you know, academia, with respect to my colleagues. And I'm an academic as well, so.
No, I think we'll absolutely agree with that, Councillor Courts. David.
Yes, so I agree with apprenticeships. I think that's a very important part of the skills agenda. But just looking at the way the funding has been distributed, you know, you've got nearly the same amount of money in research as you have in skills. And, you know, quite frankly, the research should be the business of the universities, and to a certain degree should be picked up internally by universities. So shouldn't there be more investment in skills if the ultimate agenda is to ensure that people within the regions benefit from this new opportunity?
Thank you, David. I'm just going to bring Steve in on the skills research issue.
So, Jonathan, did you want to?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to make a couple of comments, which, if I may, might add a bit of extra kind of depth or flavour to this. So I think what Steve's described is the balance of the kind of regional programmes. But when we've been developing this in across the region, we've been really mindful that this is kind of almost additional work to catalyse the investment zone. But there is a huge amount of, as Professor Campbell was saying, a huge amount of kind of core activity, whether that's going on through the universities, so on the kind of skills agenda, obviously, the combined authority is also developing through the discussion with government the kind of single settlement, which has kind of some of those adult skills as a major part of that. And so really, I think the art that we've been trying to strike is the balance of using the investment zone money, but in addition to kind of complement all of that, the kind of core activity that is ongoing at the moment. And so understanding and particularly having an eye as well that this is the kind of almost first tranche of the kind of 5-year activity that I think, the full business case also describes how, the investment zone will ramp up over time. And so it's been about understanding those particular needs, about where there is gaps to fill through that kind of first tranche of work.
David.
Yeah, thank you. That provides some context. So if a decision is required now, are we going to, or do we action a repurposing of this to ensure that funding is available for apprenticeships? And that would mean some reallocations. I presume that's the process?
So the funding we have here has been agreed with government in terms of that revenue funding, and there is a limited pot for that. The breakdown has been agreed through the CA board, etc. The important point Jonathan makes there is that actually the word catalyst is really critical to this, because what this is doing, as Paul referenced from Coventry and as a recent event with Birmingham colleagues as well, we're seeing the wider adult education budget, other funding streams coming alongside this. And that's what we need to keep in mind. So we can't necessarily change this because that's being developed, but what we can do is make sure it integrates with those other streams, apprenticeship and etc. That's a critical point. And this won't be the panacea as an investment zone, but it is a point of focus and enhanced collaboration. So those sums are agreed with government. How we now use them and what we do off the back of them is important. We fit into them.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on because of time. So thank you. I think very useful conversation around status. Can I move now to the recommendation printed on page 11 of your report back? Is this agreed? Okay, thank you very much. And put a bit of pace into proceedings now. So we're on to investment zone business programme business case update. I'll ask Steve to lead on this, but the report you've got sets out the plan for the first tranche of flexible funding provided by the government in the context of the 25-year timeframe that we're working with, and that programme of business case development will continue as we move forward with this project. And you should also be noted that the programme business case has been considered and approved by the CA's investment panel previously, and also that there was a supplementary paper circulated which includes an amended spend profile that relates to item or recommendation 2 within the report. So can I now ask Steve to develop and just say a bit more about the engagement plan going forward?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the programme business case effectively is a foundation business case for the business cases you've heard coming from Coventry colleagues, from Wolverhampton, from Birmingham, etc., and the regional funding business case. It is effectively a reflection of the proposition that went to CA board in June. The couple of decisions that have been delegated to this investment zone board. One is the approval of the programme business case as a whole. Recommendation 2 around the spend profile. There was a supplementary paper that was circulated with an additional table. Hopefully colleagues have seen that. I can touch on that in detail for our questions, but effectively it's reprofiling year 1, so we have a little bit more breathing space given the delays, and partners have agreed to that reprofiling. And then the third recommendation is the approval of that capacity funding element, so that we can ensure the capacity can be allocated to the various groups to make sure it comes forward at pace. Those are the 3 key recommendations on the business case itself. the fourth business part of the recommendation, and there are some sensitivities here, so please bear with me on that. There are three parts to it. The first two are the approval of the business case overall. The second part is the capital projects element of the business case. And the third is the revenue programmes. And as we've just discussed, one of those is around support to businesses on supply chain transition. That will be a formal commission and a formal business case that will come before this board. However, because the programme business case does contain details of that, if the board are inclined to discuss that business case, that part of the business case, we may have to ask our university colleagues to leave the room. They have been briefed to that, only because it may be a point of influence as to how that commission goes forward. If, however, the board are happy to discuss either other parts of the programme business case or to approve it through, then if the board are happy, we're going to ask our university colleagues to remain. So it really is for board members to, if they have a point of discussion, we can open it up and then address it from there. Hopefully the papers that carry with enough information that I'm perfectly happy to take anything. Okay, I'm sorry, it's quite complex.
Yeah, no, thank you, Stephen. It comes back to that, potential perceived conflict issue we spoke to at the beginning, and I hope that we can act with good sense and reasonableness in these meetings so that the universities don't need to leave the room unless there are exceptional circumstances. But any points of principle? Yes, please.
It's really, and it's a bit, I guess, protocol from a Warwickshire perspective. One of the things in the business case that I didn't necessarily see there was the assurance of displacement, and you talked about supply chain. So one of the concerns is, that they're great ideas from the investment zones, etc. But if they create a negative impact on some of the other businesses within the geographical region, if you're a combined authority, that's in a way you can manage that because you can divert kind of funds, etc. Within Warwickshire, we don't have that luxury, as I understand it. There are some limitations about support that can be given if that displacement does happen, and it is an if. So I think one is there a consideration for that, and it might maybe something that you probably need to take away and kind of come back to us on. And if there's not, can we just make sure that we note it that because obviously in Warwickshire, not far from the Gigapark, we have other kind of business parks, Arriva and all of those sort of things that we don't want to have a negative impact on, if that makes sense.
So through you, Chair, displacement is something which has always been a concern for government through any of these programmes, and we've undertaken that clearly we need to avoid displacement. We have a very close partnership through colleagues in Coventry and Warwick, and colleagues from Warwickshire as well, David's involved in those discussions to make sure that there is a genuine partnership approach to this. And what we'd rather look at is the opportunities for those businesses to gain advantage from the supply chain opportunities, and hence the conversation with Sarah Windrum from Arriva, etc. at the Innovation Board was actually how do we actually open up these opportunities to those businesses to supply to the new investors coming in. I don't know if Stevie wants to add to anything from the Gigapark perspective, but I know it's something we're keen to avoid from displacement. You may not want to. So.
Steve might want to add something technical here, but this was the argument against blooming free ports as well, because that was one of those ideas that basically pumped a load of blooming investment into an area, and it just meant everybody just moved over to that area and left the other place dead and buried. I think the key point for this is it's about new investment coming in, creating new jobs, and it's very difficult, by the way, to almost I don't know how you would ever sort of know whether or not displacement had occurred. It's almost quite a difficult point to make, but the point is, and it's clearly identified in here, particularly around the Coventry and Warwickshire proposal, the Gigapark, etc., the wider point, the wider area, this is about clearly helping to support the wider economic area in reference to the supply chain, all the rest of it, and actually help to upskill them and upgrade them so they're actually fit and proper going forward. So I think that's pretty much covered within the business case itself, unless you have some technical stuff.
If I may very quickly just come back, and also the conversations with the growth company and other partners around where we put this proposition, these promotion to international investors and wider. So it is also not only the supply chain business opportunities, but who we're targeting to get that investment coming forward.
Just on that point, then, what's the business support doing if that's not a transition fund for these zones? If I seem to remember some bits and papers, there might be a potential underspend, maybe back in greater flexibility. But this is about a transition, so the new technology with the old, so that in business terms, there's always going to be winners and losers. As they say, you know, if you don't transition that, and so you mitigate that, but there's business support fund that's there for UK Prosperity Fund. So again, the growth company have got something to do there across not just the Warwickshire and Coventry, but there's Birmingham. There's also transition that needs to take place in Wolverhampton. Whenever does that benefit? They're not the other constituent members who ain't got the investment zones. That comes out the big growth pot. So again, there's a myriad of ways we can do this. But I just want to pick up on some of the things, and this really is the central point. We need greater flexibility so as we can address the issues as they arise. You've just said, you know, the transition that comes through the different technologies of bringing into the region. I think what really concerns me is where's the clarity that we need after the 5 to 10 year? I mean, it was announced under the previous government, and we need to make sure that we ask what happens after that. So there needs to be that continuous conversation about stability, about the way that we fund things moving forward.
I mean, on that last point, you're absolutely right, Steve, and those conversations have already started informally. They need to be confirmed formally going forward. So we've got that long-term certainty, and the new government understand the commitments that have been made previously. The key people we need to deal with have been in discussions with civil servants in Whitehall the last couple of weeks around that. I think they got that clarity now, which hopefully will make things a bit easier for us. But Steve, did you want to come back on some of those points that have been made by Councillor Simpkins?
And the only one I was going to highlight in when we get to the next item, which may be quite soon, is that one of the first additional asks and recommendations within that paper in item 7 is to fully devolve the ISO funding for exactly our point about the flexibility, because it is counterproductive to have it on an annual. Whereas if you're a trusted region, actually the flexibilities that could flow from early investment in some areas and Viva. And we mustn't forget, in the background of all of this is a business rate retention for 25 years, which is in statute. That for me is the bigger prize from this in terms of the region going forward. We can allocate that across the piece. I'll stop there if I may, Chair, because I think you were going to make recommendations. So
Yes, yeah. So I think we've avoided sort of the needs for universities to leave the room. I just wanted to confirm that the recommendations that are set out being accepted. Yeah, agree. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is investments and opportunities. I believe that's it. Yeah. Which so look, we've had a really good discussion today. I think the first board meeting, setting out some of the parameters around the way we're working. I'd be really keen over the summer to have a better understanding of some of the issues we want to move forward on really quite clearly. There've been some issues around training, I think particularly apprenticeships we need to give a focus on, and doing the work we can and taking responsibility in this region for ensuring that people living, training, working here get access to the opportunities more formally. That's really important. And also, if there are obstacles to making progress where we need some further support from government, I want that to spell that out really clearly, and I'd like to do that before in advance of politicians going back to Parliament in September. Over the last, actually the last 2 hours or 3 hours before this meeting, I've been in touch with Sue Gray, Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Chancellor's Checker's Office, and Darren Jones, the Shadow Chief, also now the Chief Secretary of Treasury, of course, largely around the their understanding of the commitments that previously were made and the continuous support for this programme. And that was in light of, you know, the Chancellor Exchequer making a very big, first fiscal statement on Monday. I've had the assurances I asked for around continuous support for these projects, which is important. But more importantly was the fact that it's the growth and the potential growth that the investment zones to deliver that's, you know, is key to the continued support of the government. And also the fact that, you know, as that support gets firmed up going forward, you know, what was made very explicit was, to me, was the obligations that will fall on us to deliver that growth through these projects. So, you know, that we are going to have to ensure that all of us work together and take the leadership we need to deliver them. So I think we're in a good place. I'm shared the way we're doing things at a strategic level with other mayors across the country. I think we're in a very, very good place in terms of our proposition. And of course, the propositions we're discussing today need to be built in really effectively into our regional growth plan, which will fit into the National Industrial Strategy. And be under no doubt, for all of us in this room, an issue we're totally unified is not just attracting that marine investment, but ensuring it's going to be key to capturing that investment is that we're developing the skills proposition that is fabric to, you know, giving people in this region opportunities they need, attracting those investors and growing our economy and creating better paid jobs. So I think we're generally in a good position around that. But I know we need to move forward, but if anyone wants any comments, make any comments at this point on that, they're welcome to. Okay. In that case, Steve, did you want to add anything from the work you've been doing, conversations with Whitehall?
Thank you, Chair. I think the paper is self-explanatory. This was very much a discussion paper, and I think, actually, to be honest, we've had quite a healthy discussion already. Are there, on the last point, there are some additional asks which are on page 90. If there are any additional things that members think we should be raising, by all means, show them here, or by all means, please do drop me an email outside. So I'm happy we can help that to the proposition.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And if that's the case, can we agree the recommendation on page 87?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And finally, we go to our next meeting, which is on Thursday, the 10th of October. Please feedback to Steve and others, because I would like to take these meetings around the region. And I'm currently in discussion with the Chancellor Exchequer and the Secretary of State about one of them using that date for a visit to one of the zones and being present for part of this meeting, or at least saying something at the beginning. So we're working on that behind the scenes, and hopefully, as we work through summer, we'll get some confirmation about that. And indeed, I think we should aim to, you know, try to find a venue is the next one, but accepting that we might need to change that if and when potential visit is put in the diary. So thank you very much, everyone. Look forward to seeing you around the table in October. Thank you. What?